And the president's address drew approval and disbelief depending on who you spoke to.
And we are joined now by UCSB political science professor Julian Labar for his take on the contentious speech. Professor, thank you so much for joining us live tonight. And we want to start with what stood out to you during President Trump's address.
Hi, thank you for having me. I thought President Trump's tone was both gloating and vengeful. He touted his accomplishments on immigration, on DEI policies. I thought that the Democratic response was also quite underwhelming and ineffective. In terms of content, the president's silence on issues he probably thought were less favorable to him was probably louder than what actually was in the speech. We heard nothing about things like healthcare. We heard very little on the impact of the trade war that he's waging against Mexico and Canada. State of the Union speeches are always a little bit more like spectacle than substantive. And on a personal note, I found questionable that the president would bring a 13-year-old boy diagnosed with brain cancer to use him as a prop without mentioning that the president is the one who ordered cuts to research, especially cancer research and science more broadly. So that's what I remember.
And Professor, the president claims DOGE, led by Elon Musk, who we just heard about, is targeting waste and fraud that could save taxpayers about $105 billion, but some reports suggest the savings could be much lower. What impact do you think DOGE is having on the president's presidency so far?
Well, I'll say, there's always waste. There may be fraud in some cases, and we all want to see those kinds of problems eliminated. But I think that waste is largely a pretext. President Trump does it for two things, really. He wants to deregulate a bunch of sectors, and he wants to get rid of agencies and employees that he thinks create unnecessary friction within government and that are supposed to work as a check on his powers. Now, there's no question that the federal bureaucracy is very important for the American people. They provide, agencies provide services, they provide benefits to a lot of citizens, and the bureaucracy is staffed with individuals who are experts rather than loyalists. So you're absolutely right. DOGE's reported savings, they're often exaggerated. There have been reports of triple counting of some cuts. They've inflated some figures from millions to billions. They've taken credit for cuts that were pre-scheduled. So DOGE fits neatly into the narrative of draining the swamp, but the problem is that the numbers don't really add up.
And tariffs just went into effect last night against 3 major trade partners, and the president is not backing down. Now, what do you think about the tariffs and their potential effects on Americans?
Well, tariffs hurt both the targeted countries, Mexico, Canada, China, the Europeans are next, but they'll also hurt American citizens, right? It's going to lead to higher prices for American consumers. It's going to lead to higher production costs for American companies. Generally, the trade war that the president has waged against our allies sends a really terrible message because it comes at a moment where he's also making concessions to our adversaries. Now, the tariffs will likely cause inflation. They'll increase the prices for goods like energy. We could think about things like maple syrup, avocados, and it's going to affect both consumers and industries. Now, I'll add one more thing, which is that Canada and Mexico and other countries that have been the targets of these tariffs will look for alternative markets. And so it's not impossible that this trade war will actually hurt Americans more in the long run than it does the targeted countries.
All right, we're running out of time. Professor Labar from UCSB, thank you so much for joining us with your insight and sharing that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.